All right, so I wanted. Well, first of all, I was very conflicted about whether or not I was gonna be reviewing Andor, which is the newest Disney Plus series. But I decided, you know what? I think that for a show like this, it's better if we just have a quick discussion on sort of everything that's been going on. So I wanted to talk real quick about this show. So Andor just recently dropped, which is the brand new Star Wars show. It was one of the big shows that they were promoting, and it follows. First of all, it's a prequel to a prequel, focusing on one of the characters of the prequel, if that makes any sense. So it follows Cassian Andor, who we last saw, and we first saw in Rogue One, which released, I believe, around 2016, if I'm remembering correctly. It was around the year 2016, and basically it was it was about the group of the rebellion and the rebels who fought in order to make sure that the plans to the Death Stars reach Princess Leia. And so now, skip a few years later, and we're now getting a prequel story focusing on Cassian Andor. And I watched it yesterday. I'm recording this on a Thursday, so I watched it yesterday, and they had the 3 episode premiere. So you have 3 episodes, and each episode is roughly around like 45 minutes. And this season is going to be 12 episodes. So I was watching this, and let me tell you something. I understand where the hate of this show comes from, because here's what I've been seeing a lot. Now, I'm not going to be reviewing the show. I mean, I could, but I'm not going to be doing a weekly review of the entire show. One, because I don't think that there's enough story and momentum to sort of review this show. The tricky thing about this show is that when you have a character like Cassian Andor, who has only had one appearance and wasn't even the main character, it's really difficult to all of a sudden give him a show and have people be attached to him, because it's like, okay, what's the point of, and that's sort of like the prequel talk, right? Like, what's the point of creating prequels if we know what's going to happen in the end? And I think that that's something that this show is massively going to suffer from, because again, we don't know, or we do know what's going to happen to this guy, and we know where he's going to be heading towards. But it's one of these things of like, okay, is this really necessary? And I think that when you look at like other shows, like, Obi-Wan, for example, which we recently just had, that is an example of a show that we didn't necessarily need, but because of the amount of popularity, I mean, the character of Obi-Wan has been here since the beginning, and now we all of a sudden are going to get more storylines from this great iconic character. That makes it really, really good compared to this one character who's only had partial scenes in a prequel movie, in a standalone movie. So, right off the bat, the biggest complaint that I've seen people talk about, and it's the funniest complaint I've ever seen, is that this movie, or I'm sorry, this series doesn't feel like Star Wars, which is really sort of a bit hypocritical and a bit dumb. In my opinion, it's the most dumbest thing of all to say this doesn't feel like Star Wars, because let me tell you something. Star Wars isn't necessarily defined as one thing, and I think we all can agree with that, right? When you talk about Star Wars and sort of the universe that was created, right? You look at the original 3 movies that came out, and those, like, what do you even define those movies as? Do you define them as like fantasy, sci-fi, adventure, thrillers, whatever? Those movies are a part of a bigger universe. And at the time, it wasn't fully established that this was going to be a universe. But now that we're sort of decades have passed and movies, TV shows, cartoons have passed, this is a whole universe. I mean, we're talking about, alien species and different powers and abilities and families with multi-generational people in it, from like fathers, grandfathers, sons, grandchildren, etc. So when I see people talking about how Andor doesn't feel like a Star Wars movie or a Star Wars product, my first thought and question is, what is the definitive version of Star Wars? Because the truth is, we have had projects throughout, from the beginning to the end, of just different things. If there's been obviously a lot of people associate Star Wars with like Jedi's and Siths, lightsabers, the Force, right? But that's only a portion of what Star Wars truly is. And I think that when you compare it to sort of everything else that has come and go, this like lightsaber battles and Force and the light side and the dark side are just a fraction of what this universe contains. I mean, we talk about like bounty hunters and empires and officers and rankings and groups, and we're talking about different alien species and different planets and different storylines, and we have the different timelines where it's either before, after, or during the new trilogy or the original trilogy. So when I see people all of a sudden say this doesn't feel like a Star Wars product, well, I feel like there's no such thing as a definitive Star Wars product. Yeah, you can go to like the original trilogy and say that is definitively Star Wars, but again, we're only introduced to we're only seeing a small portion of a giant universe. It's like, try to put some real life examples. If I go to a restaurant and I say go to an Italian restaurant and I have a bowl of pasta and I say to myself, this is what food should definitively be like. Another person can look at me and be like, you're crazy, because there's all different types of food as well. You can have, for example, you yourself can say Italian food is the definitive version of food. But then you can have another people saying, well, you also have Mexican food, Japanese food, Chinese food, American food, right? So there's no such thing as like the definitive food. There's just different examples of it out there. And I feel like that's sort of similar with Star Wars, where Star Wars isn't just defined as lightsaber battles and good versus evil. No, there's actually layers when it comes to the universe itself. There's bounty hunters, you have different groups, you have TIE fighters, you have like pilot fighters and stuff like that. You have people on the ground who are just trying to live a normal business, like how we've seen in like the Mandalorian, Boba Fett, with like street people. There's so much to this whole storyline, and I think that Andor, while it is a good example of like what a show could be, I think that a lot of people are getting the wrong misconception about it. And the easiest argument to say, it's like, oh well, it's a prequel to Rogue One, which we didn't really need. And I feel like that version, and that reason compared with the reason of it's like, oh, it's not definitive Star Wars, kind of gives it a bad taste all around. And also the fact that it's also really, really slow. It's just very, very difficult when you have like a good reason why the show could be really bad, and then you have a bad reason as to why the show is bad. And then when you just come together, it just sort of blends into one, if that makes any sense. So I watched the 3 episodes, thought they were fine. I don't mind that it's a prequel storyline, that it's sort of diving in. I mean, like I said earlier, we're dealing with a whole universe. There are still so many parts of this world that haven't even been, talked about or even briefly mentioned. And I think that this show will hopefully give us some more good and bad stuff. So I'm glad that we're sort of getting more layers when it comes to like the Empire and the Rebellion and how that's all sort of handling itself. But I mean, it's fine. It's very different. Obviously, there is like no mention of like any sort of like Siths and Jedi's in it, and it's very sort of down to earth, right? Sort of on the run type of show, and I don't mind it at all. I think that just a lot of people are sort of getting the sort of mixed idea on it. And like, I don't mind if you don't dislike this show. If you dislike this show, that's your own opinion. But if you're gonna say this doesn't feel like a Star Wars product, then you have no idea what Star Wars is. Star Wars isn't just Jedi's and Siths. It's a whole universe. There's no such thing as a definitive Star Wars product. It's like opinions. Everybody has their own type of way, the way they view things. And that's exactly what Star Wars is. So if Star Wars to you is Jedi's and Siths, then that's yours. Another person could be like, it's a bounty hunter storyline, like we've seen with The Mandalorian. It could be a group of hunters and a group of warriors, right? Like we've seen with like maybe the Bad Batch, right? So just wanted to put my opinion out there. I don't mind how the show is. I'm probably not going to be watching it every single week, just because I think that every single week of constantly watching a show, I mean, it also depends on how the pacing is as well. Luckily, we did get 3 episodes with this one, but I really do hope that it does like take off like way quicker than we did with these first 3 episodes. I just wish this show the best. Again, different doesn't mean bad. Different can be good. We're gonna have to wait and see. This is only gonna be a 2-season thing, so it's not gonna be here forever. So if all the people are complaining are like, we don't want this show, well, you're only gonna have 24 episodes in total, and we're already 3 episodes down. So that's all I really have to say. I'm not gonna be reviewing Andor just because I don't think that the show at the moment is really sort of catching my eye. I do like it, but I feel like with the things that I'm trying to cover and review, it's probably not going to be worth waking up every single morning like around 6 a.m. watching it, reviewing it, editing it. I don't think so. If anything, I'll probably do maybe like checkpoints throughout the entire way. Like maybe we can do it like every 3 episodes, right? So maybe with episode 6, I can give my honest thoughts and reviews. Maybe I'll do that. If you guys are listening to this, let me know what you guys think I should do. But with that said, everybody's opinions is different. I'm okay with the show. The show's alright for me. Hopefully it gets better. Hopefully the pacing gets better. But with that said, guys, be sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. And if you are new to the channel, hit that subscribe button. Hit the notification bell for whenever I upload, you will be notified. My name is Anthony Salick, and I'll see you all next time. Peace.